Hello, I'm Morris Chalik. I'm on the program committee of West End Foggy Bottom Village, or Foggy Bottom West End Village. Who is Molly Smith? What is she that all our swains commend her? She's director of Arena Stage and has been so since 1998, before which she was in Juneau, Alaska, where she founded the Perseverance Theater and was artistic director there for 19 years. She's directed 30 plays here at Arena and is responsible for 100 workshop plays. Also, as you are probably aware, she's been responsible for the development of the Mead Center for American theater. I believe her interest in the future will be to develop more plays at the theater, plays written by women or people of color. Now, for a really glorious piece in the midst of all this gray, dismal pandemic times, it's a great pleasure for me and an honor to present to you Molly Smith.
Morris, I'm totally surprised that you didn't talk about our relationship, because Morris and I have known each other for over 40 years, if you can believe it, at Studio Theater with Joy Zinnemann. And it's great to see you again, Morris. And I'm so pleased to be able to talk to all of you today. It's great to see people's faces. Thanks so much for coming. And yeah, a dismal day. And here we are in our Washington, D.C. in the middle of our Capitol being attacked by domestic terrorists. I think we are in many ways right now a city on edge, a country on edge. And yet there's some happy news within that. First of all, I just have to give a big shout out to Muriel Bowser, who I think has been doing an incredible job with our city. And I think Washingtonians have been doing an incredible job, and all of the Maryland and Virginia area. She asked us to wear masks. We've worn masks. Our numbers are low. She asked people to stay away from what she assumed would be a peaceful peaceful protests that turned into a riot, and asked Black Lives Matter to stay away, asked other protesters from the left to stay away. And you know what? People did. And I just feel like this is a city and this is a region that gets it, that understand what we need to do as Americans in the midst of this really scary time. And personally, I can't wait until the power shifts on Wednesday. I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you all are going to be watching the inauguration. I know I am on television. I'm going to be staying away from the mall, even though I generally go down to the mall for all of our inaugurations. I've been here in Washington, D.C. now for 23 years, and I was also a student at Catholic University and got my master's at American University. But really, I learned about theater from lots of small theaters here. Studio Theater at that time was not Studio Theater. It was the Joy Zinnemann acting studio, which I was a part of. I ended up being the first teacher in the studio other than Joy. And so a long relationship there. And I went to places like New Playwrights Theater, West End Theater. I would go into a theater and I would ask, teach me how to run the box office. And I would learn how to run the box office, because I knew when I went back to Alaska to start Perseverance Theater, I'd have to have lots and lots of information about how to operate a theater, because they are notorious beasts, really complicated. They have their own language, like any business. But it also has to do very much with working with artists, and you have to be as savvy with administration in order to help make them fly. But that was many years ago, Morris, when I started Perseverance Theater in Alaska. That was 40 years ago, and it's still going today, which makes me really happy. So I've been here in DC at Arena Stage for 23 years. And one of the areas that was really important to me when I came is directly reflect this city. And when you directly reflect a city, it's all about what are the obsessions of the city? What are the interests of the city? And one of the biggest interests in Washington, D.C., of course, is around politics. And the first several years I would at Arena, there was quite a bit of controversy over my focusing and doing political plays because people said, oh, nobody wants to come and see political plays. They are busy with it all day. They're not interested in seeing it in the theaters. And that ended up to be vastly untrue, that actually we're addicted to politics. We live, eat, and sleep politics, whether it's we're reading the Washington Post or whether we're watching it on television or reading the New York Times or watching Fox News or whatever it is that we're doing, MSNBC, which is my favorite one. So politics has always been very much part of what we focused on at Arena, because Arena is a theater that is of, by, and about Americans. That's the idea that we focus on. It's around American ideas, American artists, and American playwrights. And I would say probably 95%, 98% of what we produce is written by American artists. When I came to Arena, there wasn't any other theater in the United States that was really focusing in this way. And I thought, oh my God, everybody, all my colleagues in different theaters are always looking over their shoulder to see what the Brits are doing. And somebody, us, needs to really do a hard focus on American writers, because our American writers are diverse, they're challenging, they are profound, deep, and dangerous in the American spirit. And because I actually think we're in the golden age of American writers right now, American playwrights. So that's what we've done. So I want to talk a little bit, because Morris asked me to talk about how power is portrayed in the theater. So I want to focus on a couple things. Our power play commissioning cycle, because I think that tells a big story about where Arena is. But there are some important words in Arena's mission statement: democracy, diversity, deep and dangerous. And as you can imagine, there have been many discussions about these words, especially at the level of the board and senior staff. And I think now more than ever, it's important to go to the deep and dangerous places to create the change we want to see in the world. August Wilson, who you all know as one of our greatest American playwrights, said, confront the dark parts of yourself and work to banish them with illumination and forgiveness. Your willingness to wrestle with your demons will cause your angels to sing. And in my time at Arena, we produced stories about the martyrs of the civil rights movement, privacy on the internet, the scammers and cons among us, survivors of the Holocaust, Native Americans' fight for sovereignty, and so many other American stories. And we tell stories in a different way than film and television, because our medium is a shared connection between living, breathing artists on stage and the audiences breathing with them. You often will hear theater artists say it's a different show every night, and I'll tell you why I think that is. It's because a play isn't just created on stage. A play is really created in the intersection between the audience and the actor. That's where it gets created. And that's why it's created new every single night. Because people always talk about, oh, I saw the show on such and such a date, and I came back 5 days later and saw it. It felt like a different play. And that's because whoever's in the audience, whoever's on that stage, bring in everything that's happened in that day, as well as whoever is sitting in the audience as well. We're very aware of that too. We might have somebody who has a great boisterous laugh. We might have a politician in the house that people are turning around to see. Something might have happened in the city that causes us to lean in a different way. Imagine what the performances on stage would have been last Wednesday night. Of course, we wouldn't have been able to go in Washington because we were under a curfew. But the next night, what would that have been? Because we would have taken in all the information that had gone on that day and in the subsequent days and actually put it into whatever we're watching. Plays are a kind of Rorschach test in that way. So to have a great theater, you need great artists and great writers. And writers in the theater are really different from writers in film or television, even though there's crossover between the two. In film and television, the director is a seminal artist, and in the theater, it's the writer. We have this very ambitious commissioning initiative at Arena called Power Plays, which is developing 25 new plays and musicals from a diverse mix of writers, composers, lyricists over the course of 10 years. And it's a massive undertaking. It's featuring American stories of politics and power, exploring the people, the events, the ideas that have helped shape our country's narrative and identity with one story per decade, beginning with 1776 through the current decade. Now, these works have the ability to show America at its best and at its worst, to bring people together who may not otherwise find themselves in the same world, and to introduce historical figures they may not know or understand. And the Power Play cycle features works by well-established writers, as well as those who are in the beginning stages of their careers in theater, embracing the diversity of our country to understand who we are as Americans, which is such an important topic today, right? Right now, what happened at the Capitol had people saying, this is not America. This is not the America I know. And yet we know that this is the America we know. And this is a moment to be able to understand it. I mean, we've always had domestic terrorists in our midst with groups like the Davidians, and we now see them coming en masse, not just to our Capitol building, but all around the country, to Capitol buildings in different state capitals. So this is actually going to be something really important for the theater to examine over the next years as well. So far, we've produced plays about presidents, including Camp David by Lawrence Wright, featuring President Carter and the story behind the Camp David Accord, JQA by Aaron Posner, which was a fantasy style telling of John Quincy Adams' life and career, bringing humanity to the serious portraits we're familiar seeing. John Strand's The Originalist was one that went all over the country. It took a deep dive look at the Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, searching for middle ground politically in politically divisive times. We also produced a play that dove into unique American experiences that many in our audience said that they did not know about, like Sovereignty by Mary Catherine Nagel, which was about the country's relationship with Indigenous people, both in the past and present, and through the presidency of Andrew Jackson. We also did a power play that started in March and had to be postponed, and that's called Celia and Fidel, a look into the brutal and charismatic heart of Castro and his soulmate, Celia Sanchez, on the brink of the Mariela boat lift and disaster there. So you can kind of see the kind of range. I don't know, for some reason, I can't see everybody, Jonah. I guess it's because I'm spotlighted, because I like to see people's faces when I'm talking to you.
Yeah, I can unspotlight and put you back in gallery.
I mean, you guys can spotlight me. I just like to see people as we're going, but that didn't work either. That's fine. You can put me back where you were, wherever you want. When we've completed the cycle of plays, we'll have real touchstones on the people and ideas that have formed us as Americans. Theater in many ways is the most present of art forms. Why? Because it's grounded in the reality of language, and it exists only in the moment where it is played in front of us while acting out the passions of a particular character in a story that has resonance for our lives. One thing I love about the theater is it's always about a human being with their back against the wall, fighting to get out in one way or another. And I always feel like as audience members, we put ourselves into the shoes of that person. I just love a show of hands for how many of you are theater lovers. So we got a lot of theater lovers. How many of you have been to Arena Stage? I think most people have. That's great. That's so great. That's so great to see. How many of you want to come back? Okay, I'm curious. This is where I'd really like to see you in gallery view, and maybe you can tell me later. I'm curious how many of you think that we'll be back, that theaters will be back in the summer? I think partly. How many think we'll be back in the fall? I think we got some more that think we'll be back in the fall. How many think we'll be back in January? Maybe more people think we'll be back in January. Yeah. I mean, I think we have to wait until we get to like 65, 75% in terms of vaccinations and things like that. You know, and we at Arena, you probably can imagine this. We have 64 pages of safety and security for our audiences, for our artists, and for our staff. And we've been working with doctors who are experts in these areas, just to make sure when you come back to the theater that it's safe, that it's comfortable, that it's easy for people, and that you have a great experience. It's going to be a little trickier in the rehearsal hall, I have to say, and backstage, because we'll actually do pathways backstage. So instead of being able to bump into each other backstage, you'll be going on separate tracks. I mean, there are lots of really interesting things that we're looking at right now. The other thing I love about the theater is it's always about human interactions, and theater is about community. Because I think in the same way that people gather in stadiums and churches, we gather in theaters for the heat of connection. Now, this political moment in time, lots of people have asked me, when are the writers going to be writing about it? And they will be writing about it. They're already writing about it. They've been writing about a bit about the last 4 years. But what really happens is, like with the AIDS epidemic, the first plays that came out were really informational. Like one of the first ones was As Is. And that was really about information about AIDS. And then you move to something that was a bit more creative with a play like The Normal Heart that was more evocative in places. And then you move to something like Baltimore Waltz by Paula Vogel that was that had a fantasy aspect to it. And we didn't get to the great play about AIDS for 10 years. And that play was Angels in America by Tony Kushner. So with theater, our theater writers, they take a little longer to get where they're going than some of the other writers. So stay tuned for that. Since we have not had our theaters open, we've kicked into high gear online. So if you haven't had a chance to check out what we're doing online, because you guys are all savvy online now, we've done three movies, 3 films, including one called The 51st State, which is all about the protests after the George Floyd murder, all the way through the protests in Washington, D.C., into our fight for statehood. which I think the mayor has a pretty good opportunity now of getting statehood through because of the inability to be able to get the National Guard here. And so kind of looking forward to all of that. We also did one called May 22nd, 2020, which was really all about COVID-19, a snapshot, a day in the life of the pandemic, through 10 different interviews with local people in the metropolitan area, all done with professional actors like Ed Giroux and Holly Twyford. Really some stunning work. So make sure you check that out too. We're in the midst of creating another film as well called Indigenous Earth Voices that will be all around Indigenous voices from America and Canada that will be created into a film. Right now, we just announced yesterday, Dear Jack, Dear Louise, which is a play we did last year. Did people see that? Some people saw it. Okay, we're doing it in a really fun way, either for people who saw it or didn't see it. It's going to be coming to you through the mail. Love letters between Jack and Louise. And you will receive a letter every 3 days from one or the other that will include, it was written by Ken Ludwig. And this is going to be something that is created by our props department. So it'll be all World War II stamps, the envelopes, the kind of handwriting in them. There'll be photographs of Ken Ludwig's parents within it because they were the lovers that he focused the story on. And there's telegrams within it as well. And I won't tell you all the other good stuff. But because I think we're all desperate for mail now, real things that we can tangibly hold in our hands. And I'm really hopeful that log on to arenastage.org and sign up if this is something that you're interested in, because we just announced it and lots of people want to be part of the fun. So I'm going to open it up to questions now, and you can ask me questions about anything. And I'm going to just go down into the chat room. If you want to start adding things, that'd be great. When did you decide to settle in Alaska? My family actually moved there when I was a kid, when I was 16. So I was in my senior year of high school there. My mother moved to Alaska for money and adventure. We had been in Yakima, Washington. That's where I was brought up. My dad died a few months before I was born. He was a clinical psychologist. And so my mom raised my sister and I with my grandmother in Yakima. And she was an adoption specialist, a Catholic agency, and had hit a glass ceiling in the work that she was doing. And there was this great job as head of adoptions for the state of Alaska. So she took the brave move and moved us. And in the beginning, I hated it there for the first 2 or 3 months, and then I fell in love with it. And the rest is history. My partner, Suzanne, and I have a cabin there. So we get back every year that we can. Okay, I'm going back here. Molly, could you do another presentation on the rebuilding of Arena Stage? I'd love to hear you and the architect talk about the design decisions you made. By the way, love the new building. Yes, absolutely. We could do that. Sadly, our architect Bing Tom died 2 years ago. He was in his early 70s. He was incredible, really, really brilliant. And he had a brain aneurysm and died. And it's so sad because places like the Wharf wanted him to work on some of the architecture over there. And I think there would have been lots of improvement. COVID, hope you address the bathrooms and those crowded stairs. I think the crowded stairs going down probably into the area that has to do with the Krieger, because I think all the other stairs are actually as broader than any place in the city. I don't think we'll be able to have people going up and down the stairs, they'll only be able to be going in one distance as they go. And the bathrooms, I mean, for women anyway, we have a lot of bathrooms. I made sure of that. I think we have 28 stalls, and we will have somebody who is there inside the bathrooms to make sure they get, you know, wiped down, the door wiped down as we go from person to person. Can you talk about what's happening with actors and actresses during this period? It's horrifying. 98% of artists have lost some work, 62% have lost all work, and performing artists have lost almost all work. You know, there's a certain amount of work on Zoom. A lot of artists have migrated over into teaching. Some of them are reading books on tape. But it's really, really scary because a lot of people have moved into other professions because they can't make a living. They're part of that gig economy. You know, we've done things on small levels in terms of hiring artists for readings, hiring artists for films. We have something called the Arena Stage Theater Marketplace, where we have 33 different artists that are selling everything from personal greetings to quilts to how to play chess to how to juggle to, I mean, it's really, really fantastic. And it's a way for us to be a delivery system to get our artists a bit of money during these days. So again, go to the Arena Stage website if you're interested in helping, because artists are really in a desperate place. And I fear we're going to be in the same place we were during the AIDS epidemic, where we're just going to lose a lot of people who are going to be gone from the theater. So I feel really sad about it. And a lot of us are trying to help people financially, trying to find ways that there's other work for them to do because they want to be able to work. They want to be able to feed their families. Dave the Musical clearly was fantasy, but education is public policy. And a bit about the federal appropriations process were part of the story. Can you draw any commonality or comparison between Dave as a president and Trump as a president? Well, I certainly think that was the reason why I really wanted to do Dave, because it was a story of what would happen when a good and kind man took over from a difficult, complicated president. And Dave, of course, was a doppelganger for the president in Dave the Musical. We're in the midst now and have been in the midst of trying to get the play into New York on Broadway. It's interesting. Plays and musicals end up on Broadway for lots of different reasons, but usually it's timing. It's all about timing. And the best timing for that to have happened would have been a year ago. But there was no room at the inn. There, even though there's over, 28 theaters, there's really only 6 people that make the decision about who goes into the different theaters. And there are so many plays and musicals lined up to go onto Broadway, you would not believe what a political process it is. So I still have hopes for Dave. Burke said, I and believe we really need to understand how Trump supporters think and feel, not an attack. Play would be a good vehicle. I agree with you, Burke. And I mean, I think we're all, I mean, you all are really bright. I mean, I think the audiences in Washington, D.C. are the smartest in the country. And we feel it in our audiences, the way in which you respond, the way in which you laugh. Our artists that are from other cities come in and they're always blown away by how you understand nuance and how you understand nuance within a play. And that doesn't happen in other places. It doesn't happen in New York. It happens here in Washington, D.C. We hear it from artists who come in from Chicago, who come in from Oklahoma, who come in from Seattle. They say, oh my God, this audience listens in a whole different way than any place else. Are there some plays that are seen better in a regular theater versus one in the round? Does writing have more impact in a smaller venue? I don't know that writing has more impact in a smaller venue. I think the difference is you're closer to the actor, and that may have a larger impact on you because you're closer to the heat of that human being. There are some plays that are better seen in theater in the round. Theater in the round, because like the theater in the round at Arena has 680 seats, I think. But no seat is actually more than 8 rows from the actor. So that's actually kind of cool, right? And plays that have either big ideas, a political gesture, or something like a big American musical work really well in the round, because in the round, it's all about the community. You're looking across at each other. So it isn't just the actor that you're looking at, but you're responding to everybody else who is in the theater. And that can be really exciting as well. Yeah, I think about this question all the time, and it's a great one about does writing have more impact, plays in a regular theater versus one in the round. Do you ever worry about being sued for libel or defamation for the people portrayed who might have particularly thick skins, thin skins? Yes, and we really worried about it with Justice Scalia, and that did not happen. And I'm really happy that it didn't. On the other hand, if somebody is a public figure, one can write about them in a public way, whether it's in a newspaper or whether it's on stage. It's First Amendment right. Once the COVID all clear is sounded, how long will it take to hold rehearsals and see the first opening night? Great question. It will take us about 2 months of getting our staff back in to ramp back up before we start being ready for audiences. And for actors rehearsal period, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, depending. So staff goes in first and then the actors. And I got a direct message, which Anita, I appreciate and thank you. And you know, we're just talking a little bit here about the cafe, and we've changed to real plates. You would be happy to know that. How many productions are normally done in the round? 3. They're the most expensive. It usually has the most actors in it. That's usually where the musicals are. Thank you. She's saying this is what Arena does better than anyone. Any plans to increase the number? Not right now. Thank you for compliments on Washingtonians' audience. Specific examples of what we did good, and a smile. I think I gave some in terms of audience responses. What specific actions are you taking to increase minority participation in all of the theater arts? Well, we probably are one of the rarest theaters in the city. 1/3 of our projects are focused on BIPOC, people of color. 1/3 of our audience is BIPOC. That's one of the biggest numbers in the country. And I think it all has to do with programming. So watch us continue to ramp up numbers of projects that are being done on stage in terms of our African American audience, our Indigenous audience, It has, of course, diversity always makes it more exciting because they are important stories that need to be told, both stories that nobody's ever heard before, and also stories that are newly told in one form and another. Did Scalia see the play? No. He was coming to see the play, and then a day he was coming, we were in dress rehearsal, he sent a note and said, I can't come, and I'll tell you why. If I love it, people will call me a shill when I talk about it. If I don't like it, they'll tell me I have thin skin. So I'm going to wait until I can sit in my easy chair and watch the film. And he died before that happened. But his family came, not just once, but I think 3 different times, and loved it, even though they didn't agree with all of it. This is a play by John Strand. Ed Giroux, who gave an incendiary performance. And Justice Scalia really, really liked him, loved him. He's kind of a doppelganger for Justice Scalia. He was invited to the funeral by Justice Scalia's wife because they ended up with such a good relationship. When he first saw Ed, because Ed Giroux went to see him at the court, he invited him for lunch. He walked in and he said, Justice Scalia said to him, hello, glad to meet you, Ed. I've heard that you're a wonderful actor. That's good. I want to let you know I'm not going to see the play. Sit down, let's have lunch. Which I just kind of loved. And one of the things that I think is great is because he was an originalist, which meant that he's parsing every word of the Constitution. And because Ed is a Shakespearean scholar and parses every word, that's where they were able to meet and have their discussions. BIPOC. BIPOC means Black, Indigenous, people of color. Black, Indigenous, people of color. You'll start to hear this more, probably mostly in relationship to theater. Thank you for doing the civic discussions. Are you able to discern any impact or plan to do more? Yeah, we're absolutely going to do more. And we often have upward of 200 people who come. For those of you who've joined the Molly Salons, they're half an hour on Thursday night at 7 p.m. We probably only have about 100 that watch them immediately, but then we have up to 10,000 who watch them afterwards. So they kind of go all around the country. And it is both a combination of artists and political leaders and people who are doing interesting work. Do you know of any theaters that have, and just to answer your question about civic dialogues and civic discussions, yes, we will continue to do those, although I think we're going to combine them more with what's happening in the art form, a focus on a particular play that then moves into the civil dialogue along with it. Do you know of any theaters that have closed their doors permanently because of the coronavirus? Yes, there are theaters around the country which have closed. I do not know any in the Washington, D.C. area or in Virginia or Maryland. I know that RBG was a huge patron and fan of Arena. Will there be a play about her? Yes, we have, and this is new news. Nobody knows this. We haven't announced this, so keep it under your hat. We have commissioned Colleen Sinnette Jennings to write a play about RBG in the 1990s as part of, I was talking to you about our power play cycle. So 1990s is open, and that was when RBG went into first became a Supreme Court justice. And she married my partner and I, Suzanne Blue Star Boy, which was amazing. And you can imagine how the theater shook when she said, by the power vested in me in the United States Constitution, I now pronounce you married. This was before Obergefell. This was when it was legal in Washington, D.C., but not the rest of the country. I think that that's the end of.
That was a great story to finish on. There was one question I want to go back to, but I'm picturing that in my head. That's a really amazing story.
You guys want to see a picture?
Sure, I'd love to see a picture.
Okay. Can you see it?
Wow, that is a great picture.
Have fun.
Yeah, that's a really it's a pretty good person to officiate your wedding, to say the least.
Yeah, amazing.
In the one-up game of theater of wedding officiants, I think that's a pretty a winner. There was one question here on the effect of theater on the public. Who does not go to the theater?
Oh, I didn't see that. Who does not go to the theater? Who does not go to the theater? I mean, there are a lot of people that don't go to the theater. I mean, we would like it if everybody went to the theater, but you know, if young people aren't branded at a young age, they will not go to the theater. And so we work a lot in the schools. We work with around 20,000 young people, and we do the DC ticket partnership as well to make sure that young people have that experience in the theater. I mean, I'd love to do a program where every 12-year-old sees a play in Washington, D.C. every year, or maybe they see 2 plays every year. Because I think that, I mean, we all know that. Yes, and cost is a big deterrent. Of course it is. Going to the theater, people who can't afford it don't go to the theater, of course. You know, and a lot of theaters have different programs to mitigate that. And I think you will see, as theaters reopen, more programs in that area to make theater more accessible and more equal to people that can't afford it. Morris, were you going to say something?
I was, thank you. Actually, that was a part of my question, and the other part I decided to take off, and it had to do with how theater can be used with the people who were visitors to Washington on January 6th, in terms of people who think more liberally, i.e. me, and people who came to the city at that time, how we can talk to each other, and whether theater in any way can be used to as an open discussion.
You know, Morris, there are more young people that are going out to different communities in the United States and creating theater in small towns. And I think that that is something that ends up being extremely important, because we know how powerful it is when that happens. Somebody had asked about another civil dialogue. One of the civil dialogues that people have been asking us to do is one on how does one become radicalized? And are there plays that have been written about that? And how can people be de-radicalized? And I mean, I think that's a big topic of conversation we'll probably be having for the next number of years, right?
And I hope we hear more of that from you, or see more of it from you. I think it seems like you're the best encyclopedia of theater, both of color and story and fact. So it was wonderful hearing you. and I think there may be some more questions come up, but you mentioned that I didn't say something personal at the beginning. I didn't have pictures in my head, and what was in my mind was a stupid old joke that, well, it was a story, it's allegedly a true story, about someone who was to introduce Anna Eleanor Roosevelt. And he'd never introduced anybody that famous before. And he went to someone who was from the media. I think it was a well-known name. He said, "What do I do? What am I supposed to say?" And the man said to him, "Well, you know, she's so well-known, there isn't that much you need to say. You just say a small amount and let her do the talking." Uh, and in his nervousness, when he went to introduce her, he said, "And now I present Miss Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, about whom the less said, the better." But that's not true of you. The more said, the better.
I love that. I love that. I see one more question, traffic and parking also an issue vis-a-vis arena. I totally agree. I mean, it's just a pain. Worse now with the wharf. Have you tried doing shows at low traffic times, and how has that worked? We have had conversations about changing times. We've had focus groups with some of our season ticket holders and things like that. People tend to like the times. That's why we're starting to do more shows that are early in the evening, like on a Sunday night. And maybe we need to do the same thing like on a Tuesday evening, where a show's at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock instead of at 8 o'clock, something like that.
Great.
Will you
I do know you
continue
have
to
to,
do films after live theater resumes? Yes. Yes. Our online activity, we're in a new world. We did Camp Arena Stage this year. We had, I think, 300 young people in it, all the way to Bogota, Colombia. It has changed our reach. Our online went up 900% from where it was before the pandemic. So I hope
That's
I see
great.
you guys either online or in the theater when we get back again. I miss you guys. I miss live theater. I know you do too.
Great. I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope you'll join us again at a future event. But I do know you have to get moving on to your next meeting, and I wanted to say thank you. Does anyone have any last questions, or should we wrap it up?
Thank you, Jonas. Thank you, as always. He puts this all together for us.
I love it.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you very much, Molly. It was so
Thank you,
great.
Molly.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It's great to see you guys.
Thank you. You've got